Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode, episode 22 of this artificial intelligence project where we're trying to make AI accessible to everyone. All right, so as a quick recap from yesterday, we were working on making kind of like a new area to present visualizations, right? And yeah, so far it wasn't doing anything useful. So today I spent most of the time getting the basics working. Yeah, so this is, I think it makes more sense if I show kind of like what we have today. So the first thing that you can notice here is that now we can actually drag and drop a couple columns. So this is the iris data set, and it basically shows the points. This is kind of like pretty straightforward. And it's also pretty interesting that we added a new view, which is not just X and Y, but you can kind of like also parameterize colors and the size. And to me, what is really interesting for the most part is that this is a generic system. This visualization in particular is not hard-coded. So basically the way this works is you write your code, which in this case we wrote a D3 code for creating this visualization. And on the very top, we have a couple parameters that we define right in the user interface. And as I was mentioning yesterday, we can even add more. Anyway, so this is our visualization, but we can also, for instance, drag the species as the color and the petal width as the size. And again, this is kind of like a way of like customizing your visualization. But to me, what is really powerful is that these visualizations are not hard-coded. Like if you were to be a more advanced user, kind of like the vision here is that you will be able to create a new visualization, and then it becomes part of the user interface, and you can use it for whatever you want. And then we can look at another example, and I think for that I'll have to kill the app and restart because there's no way of cleaning things yet. So for instance, we talked in previous videos about how we added support for importing data from websites and also from CSV. So let's try that. So we have a CSV file here that we've imported, and now we can also go into the visualizations. So this data set is kind of like a time series of stock information from Apple, its stock price, and kind of like what we can, we currently don't support dates, date conversions, are still unsupported, but something that we can do is we can go to the custom view, and then perhaps we can just compare the open price against the closing price, right? And obviously it's pretty similar because over time, especially over multiple years, a stock usually opens around the open and close price, so that this would make sense. But we can also plot the volume, and so this makes sense. So at the beginning of Apple's kind of like stock trading history, like when the stock was like $1, in order to actually buy a good chunk of Apple, you would have to trade a lot, right? So the volume, it's bigger, right? Compared to the stock price. Now, as the stock has grown in price, you can have like similar volume with fewer trades. So I mean, not an expert here, just trying to interpret kind of like what comes from this particular chart. And then, the color here is not super interesting. We can use the date, but that's completely relevant. Yeah, so this is not very useful. The color is not that we have a category, but at least it looks, prettier. That's about it. Actually, I felt like it was, today was super interesting to me because it's probably the first time that I see the app doing something mildly interesting and useful. Obviously still is not... is not yet to like be test driven by some of you watching these videos. I still think that we're at least a month or two away from kind of like having some sort of like alpha release or whatever. But I feel kind of like excited that this is, at least is something useful, right? Anyways, all right. So I'm gonna look at a couple comments. I think we have a couple comments from yesterday. Thanks. First of all, thanks for the encouragement. I'll keep posting videos. And then some feedback from Carlos. So basically this is brutal feedback, which I really appreciate. And Carlos is mentioning that, unless the charts are interactive, that there's perhaps, let me see if I'm interpreting this correctly. Unless the charts are interactive, there's not a lot of value in these particular charts, right? So what kind of the question is what's the vision here? And as I have mentioned in the past, I don't have a grandiose vision for the future. I'm mostly, as a software engineer, I'm building what feels right at each point in time. We've been going through this path where it's okay, we want to do predictions, but we need to transform data, we need to do visualizations. So I'm just kind of solving the next immediate path. I would be curious to ask Carlos if Carlos would consider, this approach of drag and dropping, kind of interactive. I don't necessarily think this is particularly what Carlos is mentioning. I think the question is more about what can you do with the actual chart, right? Because it's a D3 visualization, so potentially, some of the suggestion Carlos was mentioning is can you zoom in, zoom out? Can you hover? All those things, right? So currently the answer is no. This is a static image, so why are we using D3? However, I did mention that, it would be really cool. One of the reasons why we use D3 is mostly because it allows us to build interactive applications, right? And interactive charts. So the idea is that over time we have more complex charts, and I think it's really great feedback, right? If we're just using D3 to create a static sites, static images, I think the biggest advantage of D3 would be, no, actually, there's not much advantage to D3 unless they're interactive, right? Anyways, so definitely, I think at some point, we could consider adding interactivity for sure. I do feel like the advantage of D3 here, even if a lot of things end up being static, is that we're building this application on top of web applications. So even if they're not interactive, unfortunately, there's not a lot of other options compared to non-interactive frameworks, right? In the web space, there's you have D3, and it's not there's some sort of other library for not doing interactive visualizations. But I think the comment speaks more to, it would be a missed opportunity not to add interactivity, right? Because why not? The charts are already interactive since they're built on SVG and HTML, right? So why are we not making them interactive? I think the short answer is, at this point in time, it's just priorities. Yesterday we didn't even have a way of visualizing anything. Today we have a way of visualizing something. I think personally, before I get into interactivity, I want to explore a couple other charts. Right now we only have the scatter, this kind of type of scatter plot. I want to validate the idea with a couple other charts, and this might take a little bit, but we'll keep making progress. So yeah, that's all I have for today. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great weekend, and see you soon.